Hello everyone. I got a new microphone, so I hope the sound is even better. Anyway, welcome to my July reads and August/end of summer TBR. I was in a big reading slump in June. I read 3 books, none of which left a lasting impact, and the reading slump kind of bled into July. I do feel like I'm out of it now, but I also think that a good thing about that slump was that now I do feel like I don't need to read all the time. I kind of just pick up a read when I want to read rather than being like, I have nothing to do, I should read right now, which is something that I'm trying to switch a little bit. But anyway, first book that I finished in July was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I've read The Poppy War book 1 and book 2, and now I've read Yellowface, and I do plan on reading her other books because I find that she comes up with very interesting plots, which is not something that I usually love reading. I'm more of a character-driven story person rather than a big plot person, but I think that the way that she weaves her stories are very interesting, and Yellowface was so incredibly pertinent and in the time that I was reading it in, because it touches on plagiarism within the literary book industry. We follow a white woman who is gonna use the manuscript of her late friend who was Asian, and she's gonna pass it as hers. It's gonna bring her a lot of fame and a lot of backlash as well, and it's a very gripping story. There were parts that felt a little bit long and over-explained, but overall I found that it was just such an interesting commentary and look into the publishing industry, with AI being such a big issue now for artists and writers. I think it was just even more interesting to read when I was reading it, and I would recommend it to everyone because I do think that it brings a lot of interesting conversations forward. And I feel like because of the way it's set up, where it's a little bit of a mystery but not really, but also has a very comprehensive prose, I do feel like it would be interesting for pretty much anyone, so highly recommend that one. Really enjoyed it. Then I read Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I was in the mood for a vampire story. I'd heard that this was close to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I loved last year, and I would agree with that commentary. I think the way that it's written, the flow of the sentences, the premises, and also some of the settings are very close to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but this also dabbles into morality a bit more because of the vampires. It's not fast-paced by any means. It's quite slow, it's quite contemplative. I really enjoyed that none of the characters were perfect. In fact, we take a lot of time following their flaws. I'd requested the arc on a whim, and I ended up getting it. I also found out that the end of the book is different from the arc to the published version, and I must say I think I prefer the arc version, so I was happy to have that. I annotated it quite a bit, and I actually developed a new annotating technique with this book where I do a different kind of bracketing when I really like the turn of phrase. For example, I found a random one that says something very simple, but I liked how it was phrased. The city is bursting at the seams, or music ricochets against the stone. Really enjoyed this one. It did take me a bit to read, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Found the story very nice. I feel like it would be even more atmospheric to read probably during autumn, closer to Halloween, because it does have a darker setting and mood. Then I'd heard good things about Problematic Summer Romance by Hazelwood, and I was in the mood to binge a book to really make sure that I was out of the reading slump, so I did binge it. I read it pretty fast, didn't end up loving it. I kind of feel indifferent towards the book. I feel like the writing was a bit different. She took more time trying to describe the scenery, and unfortunately for some reason I just could not picture it, nor did it move me to a great extent, so I just feel a little indifferent about that one. But maybe it's also because of that kind of vibe of romance books. I'm not sure. I wouldn't say it was terrible. I just don't really have any feelings about it. Then I made a story asking for your help to choose my next read, and the book that won was Happy Hour by Marlowe, Granados. And again, I didn't love this one. I don't know what to say about it because I felt disappointed in a sense when I was reading it. I didn't connect to any of the characters, specifically the one whose voice we're in did not connect to her at all or did not relate to her, and I found her insufferable, which in a sense was the point, but at the same time, because I couldn't relate, I couldn't find great things about her personality, if you will, that made me want to root for her in a sense or not. I just didn't feel attached at all. I just don't think that it was what I wanted or what I needed. Yeah, I don't have great things to say about this one, unfortunately. I do feel like I can see why people really like it. Unfortunately, I was just not one of them. Then I read Le Coup de Soleil by Cameron Philippe. She actually makes videos on YouTube. That's how I discovered her books. I've read 3 of them now, I think. This was my 3rd. This is the only fiction I've read by her. It was published a bit ago. It is queer, coming of age, adolescence, very close to Call Me By Your Name. In the setting, it takes place in the countryside in France near a lake, but the characters are very different. I was pleasantly surprised because this was the 3rd time that I was trying to read it, and the first 2 times I was not in the mood, I guess, but this time I really enjoyed it. The writing was really nice, and I am really excited to hopefully one day read her next books if new ones come out. She's trying to get traditionally published now, so might have to wait a bit longer, but I really want to see the evolution of her writing in fiction because I really enjoyed that one, and I think it's my favorite of the ones I've read by her. The characters were just very well written, and her voice is very clear and strong. I could recognize it through the entirety of the book. Then I read Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. I want to say that maybe I didn't fully understand it, or maybe I just didn't love it. I'm not sure which it is, probably a bit of both. While I loved her voice in nonfiction, I found that in this book it was really hard to recognize. I also just didn't have much interest in the story, if I'm honest. I can see that it's interesting in a more objective manner, in a subjective way. I didn't feel interested in it much. I liked the beginning, and then I just felt a bit bored through the rest of it. I still finished it because I wanted to see if it was going to pick up, and it did, but I just never felt like I was truly there with the character. I also feel like I expected something a bit different from this book, so overall a little bit disappointed, I would say, with this one. And finally, I just finished actually Waist Deep by a Danish author, so Linea, Maja, Ernst, I want to say, not sure. I loved this book. First and foremost, I think this was my favorite of the month. We follow a group of 7 friends. 5 of them were really close in university. 2 of them are the significant others that come in the group. It was a very reflective novel. The characters are also very performative. A lot of the thoughts that they have are based on how they should act in front of the others and what the others think of them. We follow them much later in their lives, and they're trying to grapple with the distance that is between them, but also the closeness. They're trying to make up what life is in your 30s, I guess, after you're done with university, when you start having kids, you start getting married, etc. It has a lot of really interesting commentaries and conversations on society as it is now, on queerness, on monogamy, and also just the idea of growing up. The ending specifically kind of touches on the fig tree analogy, which I found really interesting. And overall, I just really enjoyed this book. It's filled with this kind of tension that's brimming, and you're curious to read where it's gonna go, but I was also really surprised with how we were following the characters and what we were seeing and feeling with them. We're under everyone's point of view basically, except for one person, which is so interesting because he's described as really reserved and he keeps his thoughts to himself, which actually happens in the book. We don't get his entire thoughts, and it also is important for the way the story goes, but overall I just found it so compelling. Really happy that I picked this up at the bookstore because I'd just seen the cover and I thought it would be a good summer read, but it was such a pleasant surprise and definitely one of the better books of the year. It might make it into my favorites, we'll see with time, but really enjoyed this one. And that was my July reads. Let's get on to the TBR very quickly. This is the big pile. I don't think I'll get through all of them, but that's okay. I'm going to describe them pretty fast because I feel a bit lazy. The Red Pony by Steinbeck. This is a short book on a boy who is discovering the reality of adulthood through the gifts from his dad, I think. Woman, which follows a Romanian student who lives in Paris as he reflects on his trip to the Alps and the women that were in his life then. The third book in the Neapolitan Quartet, Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay, follows Lila and Lenu yet again as they grow older and as they go through their lives. Sunburn, which is a queer coming-of-age story following two girls. It's set in Ireland and they grapple with their sexualities and society. Hot Milk, which from what I've heard is on a mother-daughter relationship. Really intrigued for this one. Thirst for Salt, which all I know about is that it's a literary love story following a woman and a man who is quite older. And then finally, Noces, suivi de l'été by Camus, which I think is just reflections or little novellas on summer. I'm not entirely sure if it's fiction or non-fiction. I will find that out when I read it. And that was basically it. Sorry for the quick TBR. I just don't really know extensively what the books that I want to read are about. I hear about them, then forget what they're about, and then I still want to read them. I don't know. But yeah, I'll see you soon.